almost none. Roger's stomach tightened as Magda appeared in his mind. A year had passed since the Nazis had visited the house, yet his heart still seemed to stop each time a car rumbled down their street, not beating again until the sound of the engine faded in the distance. Though she seemed to have escaped detection for now, nothing save the Reich's defeat would ease his fears. Of course, the end of the war would likely signal Hans's permanent return, and it seemed a cruel irony that the very thing that could ensure Magda's safety would surely end their affair as well. He washed and dressed, then made his way downstairs. Magda stood in the doorway to the kitchen, already wearing her coat. She crouched to adjust the baby's hat low and snug around her brow. "Darling, surely you aren't going out?" he asked. It was a familiar refrain, him begging her to stay home because it was too dangerous on the street, her insisting that if she allowed them to stop her, then they had already won. But even with lectures cancelled, he usually departed for the library to work on his thesis before she started her day, and he could tell by her guilty expression now that she more often than not refused to respect his wishes. He was reminded once again that there was a part of her he did not know, that in some ways she would always remain a stranger to him. "I have to go to market," she replied. "Frau Hess said there's milk to be had." She was going for the child. Magda would not pass up an opportunity to find nourishment for Anna. Her own milk had dried up just a few months after Anna was born, owing, he suspected, to the limited food that was available, as well as the slight nature of her build. They weren't starving, but more and more often their meal consisted mainly of a watery Eintopf stew intended to stretch whatever beans or potatoes could be had. "Let me go for you," he suggested. She shook her head. "I always go. You would only raise suspicion." "But it's too— I'll not be a prisoner in my own home," she retorted, cutting him off. Her eyes widened angrily. There was something in her determination that bespoke a darker side of her past, a place to which she would not be returned. He wanted to ask what had happened, but he knew it was not the time, and that she would not answer. There was a moment of stubborn silence as they stared at each other, neither backing down. Magda adjusted her cuffs. "All right," she said, relenting unexpectedly. There were circles under her eyes that betrayed a lack of sleep. It wasn't the child, he reflected, who was keeping her up nights. Born in the era of the bombing raid, Anna had quickly grown into a sound sleeper, not roused even as the house shook. No, it was worry that disturbed Magda's sleep, though whether for herself and Anna or Hans or all of them he did not know. "Thank you, Liebchen," he said. There was a scuffling by his feet. "Lieschen." Anna raised her tattered rag doll, imitating him. "Lieschen." Roger looked down from the child to her mother, then back again, and he could not help but chuckle at the child's attempt. Magda joined him, and soon they were both laughing so much harder than the moment seemed to warrant, a grateful respite from the heaviness around them. For if they could still find a moment's lightness, he reflected, perhaps things weren't so bad after all. Anna watched, wide-eyed and earnest, puzzled to have generated such a reaction. She held out her arms and Roger picked her up, his laughter subsiding. He exchanged uneasy glances with Magda. They would have to be more careful, now that the 17-month-old Anna saw and repeated so much. He handed the child to Magda, fighting the urge to kiss her as he did so. Then he turned and walked from the house. He returned that night a bit later than usual, detained at the library by a conversation with one of his professors. He hesitated at the front door, still feeling that he should knock as he had the day he arrived, the perennial guest. Inside the foyer, he paused. The air seemed different, and for a moment he wondered if Hans had come home unexpectedly, but it was not that kind of change. Instead of seeming supercharged, the house felt hollow. "Hello?" he called. He did not use Magda's name, not wanting to sound overly familiar in case his instincts were mistaken and Hans had, in fact, returned. There was no response. Roger's skin prickled. Magda was always home this time of day, feeding Anna and preparing dinner. He walked through the kitchen, but the countertops were scrubbed clean, the dishes that lay drying in the rack this morning now put away. Willing himself to breathe calmly, he continued swiftly to the dining room.